Candace Owens sat perfectly straight in her chair on Kelly Clarkson's bright pastel set, legs crossed, hands folded so tight her knuckles barely moved. Kelly perched across from her on the couch, cards resting in her lap, but barely touched. The audience hush was polite, that careful hush daytime crowds hold when they feel the smiles might snap. Kelly leaned in with that warm host smile, but her eyes were sharp around the edges. Candace, you've built a reputation on saying exactly what's on your mind, no matter who it offends. But some folks think lately it's more about stirring the pot than saying the truth. What do you say to that? Candace tilted her chin up slightly, her words crisp. If the truth stirs the pot, then maybe the pot was rotten to begin with. A few polite chuckles, but the hush stayed tight. Kelly nodded once, cards tapping her knee. But you've gone after a lot of people lately, single mothers, working parents, folks who feel like you punch down more than up. Do you ever worry you're hurting people just trying to survive? Candace's smile was thin as glass. You can't build strong families by excusing broken ones. And if that hurts feelings, so be it. The hush shifted, a soft cough, someone's bracelet clinking against a seat arm. Kelly's voice dipped lower, that hush-catching calm. You say you care about families, but you talk about them like there's only one right way to be one. Don't you think that leaves a lot of people out? Candace's eyes narrowed, hands tightening on her knee. Strong values aren't optional, Kelly. You lower the bar, you lose the foundation. Kelly leaned back just enough that the hush pulled in tighter. And who gets to set that bar? You. Candace leaned forward, her voice like a quiet hammer. If the people who claim to know better had done a better job, maybe I wouldn't have to. The hush cracked, a few seats shifting, no one daring to clap. Kelly's cards dropped to the table with a soft smack. So it's your way or failure. That's the message. Candace didn't blink. It's called standards. And this country used to have them. Kelly's smile didn't return. The hush bent tight, bracing for the first snap. The audience hush pressed closer, that polite tension that made every shuffle of shoes sound too loud under the stage lights. Kelly Clarkson kept her tone warm, but her eyes didn't soften. She could feel Candace's jaw tighten each time she spoke. Kelly folded her hands in her lap. Candace, you talk about standards like they're the same for everybody. But you know that's not true. Not every family gets the same shot. Candace's smile stayed, but there was no warmth left. Then they should fight harder for it. Personal responsibility is not an attack, it's reality. A soft murmur rippled from the back row. The hush snapped it silent. Kelly tilted her head. So you think a single mom working 3 jobs just isn't fighting hard enough? Candace leaned forward, her tone edged with ice. I think if the culture stopped celebrating broken homes, we'd have fewer single moms struggling in the first place. Kelly's eyebrows rose just enough to sharpen her words. And what about the dads who leave? The systems that make it harder? The jobs that don't pay a living wage? Candace shrugged once, her voice flat. Bad men will always exist. Strong women make better choices. It's that simple. A gasp cracked the hush. Someone near the front row shifted forward like they wanted to say something, but they didn't. Kelly's hands spread open. You really believe that? That pain is just a sign of weakness? That's not truth, that's blame. Candace's eyes flashed. No, that's accountability. The truth is, we've stopped telling people the consequences of their choices. Kelly leaned in closer now, voice soft but iron underneath. You keep saying we, but it's always them, isn't it? The single moms, the working poor, the people who don't have your platform. They're always the problem. Candace's jaw flexed, her smile vanishing. The problem is excuses, Kelly. You give people an out, and they'll take it. The hush snapped tighter, no polite claps, no warm chuckles. Just that cold quiet that said this was nowhere near done. Kelly Clarkson's fingers drummed once on her cue cards, then fell still on her knee. Her smile was gone now, replaced by the kind of calm that felt like a held breath before thunder. Kelly's tone dropped lower, voice aimed straight at the hush. Candace, you keep talking about consequences, but you never talk about the bigger mess. What about the systems that make it almost impossible for some people to get ahead, no matter how hard they work? Candace didn't blink. The system is an excuse. You want better? Be better. A small, tense laugh cracked out from someone in the back row. The hush swallowed it whole. Kelly leaned in, hands folded tight. That's easy to say when you have a microphone and a platform. What about the people who don't? Candace's voice snapped like cold glass. They have choices. You don't get to blame the world forever for your bad ones. Kelly's eyes narrowed just enough to push the hush tighter. What about the kids, Candace? The ones who didn't choose the poverty, or the broken homes, or the schools that failed them? Candace's reply came back without a flinch. They grow up, and then they decide who they're going to be. Kelly's voice rose a notch, cutting through the hush like a slow tear. And you don't see anything cruel in telling them it's all on them? That nothing around them needs to change? Candace leaned forward, her smile gone for good. You think you're helping them by telling them they're victims? I'm the only one telling them they can change their story. The hush bent. A few audience heads turned like they wanted to clap, but didn't dare. Kelly's tone dropped to a hush breaker. You don't sound like you want them to change. You sound like you want them to feel ashamed. Candace's eyes narrowed into a razor's edge. Maybe shame is what this country needs. A soft gasp slipped out, bouncing under the studio lights. Kelly sat back, her expression sharp enough to cut the hush in half. And the audience knew they weren't done yet. The hush that filled Kelly Clarkson's set felt tight enough to snap. The lights hummed above, but the air was thick with every word they hadn't said yet. Kelly leaned forward just enough that her voice landed like a pin dropped on glass. Candace, you talk about shame like it's a cure. But shame doesn't feed kids. It doesn't keep the lights on when the bills come due. Candace's jaw tensed, her hands clasped so tight her knuckles went pale. Shame reminds you that you can do better. It's the push we lost when we started calling every bad decision someone else's fault. A ripple ran through the audience. No claps, no gasps, just that hush that said no one was looking away. Kelly's eyes narrowed, her tone calm but coiled. So when a kid's hungry, that's a bad decision? When a mom skips meals so her baby eats, that's a moral failing? Candace's voice dropped low, sharp as a knife. When you normalize broken families, you normalize broken kids. And then you wonder why they grow up angry. Kelly's fingers tapped once on the table, the sound echoing in the hush. You don't think they have the right to be angry? Candace's eyes narrowed. Anger's not an excuse for a wasted life. Kelly's laugh was small and bitter. You ever been hungry, Candace? You ever worked 3 jobs and still been broke? Candace didn't flinch. I've been broke. I didn't stay there. That's the difference. A low gasp cracked out near the front row. The hush sucked it right back in. Kelly's smile didn't return. So everyone who stays there, what? Just doesn't want it bad enough. Candace shrugged, voice flat. Hard truth is better than a comforting lie. Kelly leaned back, her eyes cold now. Sometimes it's not a lie. Sometimes it's life. And you don't get to sit here and tell people they're broken on purpose. Candace shot back so fast it caught the hush by the throat. Then who will? You? With your songs about heartbreak and your pretty speeches about hope? You keep them soft. I'd rather make them strong. Kelly's hand slammed her cards onto the table. Strong isn't cruel, Candace. Strong lifts people up. Candace's smile returned, but this time it cut like glass. Maybe they've been lifted enough. Maybe it's time they stood up for themselves. The hush cracked wider, and the audience knew the worst hadn't even landed yet. Kelly Clarkson's hand hovered over her cue cards like she wanted to grab them and throw them off the table. The hush was so tight it made the hum of the studio lights sound like thunder rolling just behind the audience's ears. Kelly's voice landed flat, but sharp. You really believe people choose to fail? That's what you're saying. Candace's eyes glittered under the harsh lights. Her smile turned sharp enough to cut. People choose to stay stuck. They choose bitterness over building something better. Kelly's breath hitched just enough to show the hush how deep it stung. Do you know how easy it is to say that when you've never been so low you can't see a ladder? Candace leaned in, her tone soft but vicious. I know exactly how it feels. And I know nobody showed up to save me. So I saved myself. Someone near the back row gasped, and a single clap cracked before dying on the hush. Kelly didn't blink. So you think the mom working nights, the dad with 2 jobs, the kid who comes home to an empty fridge, they just need to try harder? Candace's jaw flexed. I think they need to stop voting for people who keep them there. A hush laugh bubbled from somewhere, but no one wanted to own it. The tension wrapped around every seat like a rope pulled too tight. Kelly's smile vanished for good now. You want to talk politics? Fine. You want to call people lazy because they didn't pull off what you did? Fine. But don't stand here and pretend it's all about truth when you're cashing checks off their struggle too. Candace's eyes flashed. Everything I've earned, I earned by telling them what you won't. Kelly slammed her palm flat on the table. No. You earned it by making them the enemy while pretending you're their friend. Candace shot up straight in her chair, that hush-breaking hush ready to split the room. You think you're the hero here, Kelly? Singing your sad songs about heartbreak, while the people who listen to you stay broke and broken? You sell hope like a fairy tale. I sell reality. Kelly's voice cracked, but her eyes didn't. No, you sell shame. And you call it strength. Candace's smile slipped, her jaw tight. Maybe this country needs a little more shame. A sharp intake of breath ran through the front row, the hush bracing for the break it knew was coming. Kelly Clarkson's shoulders squared as she leaned closer to Candace, her voice now louder than the hush dared to be. You think shame fixes hungry kids? You think your hard truths pay the rent or put food on the table? Candace sat up straighter, her tone icy smooth. It makes them stop expecting someone else to do it for them. Kelly's laugh cracked out, but it was cold, hollow. You sound like every rich politician who's never had to pick between heat and groceries. Candace shot back. I sound like someone who climbed out while everyone else said it was impossible. A chair squeaked in the front row, a woman shifted, eyes wide, whispering to the friend beside her. The hush bent and frayed, but no one clapped, no one gasped out loud. Kelly slammed her cards down so hard they slid off the table and hit the floor. You keep saying I. But this isn't about you. This is about every kid who doesn't have a voice, every mom you shame, every dad you call worthless when he's killing himself at 3 jobs just to keep the lights on. Candace's eyes narrowed, her hands planted firm on her lap. They don't need your pity. They need the truth. The system won't save them. They have to save themselves. Kelly's voice dropped so low the hush felt it like a shiver. And you think you're the one to deliver that message? The self-appointed judge of who deserves to feel human. Candace leaned in close enough that the audience could see the fire in her eyes. If telling them the truth makes me the villain, fine. Better a villain who says it like it is than a coward who sells them pretty lies. A single boo cracked out from somewhere near the back, then another. Candace's head snapped toward the sound, her smile curling cold. Boo me all you want. You'll still go home and do nothing. Kelly stood up suddenly, her chair scraping so loud it made the front row flinch. You don't get to come here and insult the very people you claim to want to help. Candace stood too, her voice sharp enough to slice the hush apart. I don't want to help people who refuse to help themselves. Kelly's voice came back steady, flat. Then maybe you should go. Candace's eyes glittered, her jaw clenched so tight her teeth showed. Maybe I will. And the hush broke wide open, a raw, messy tear that left no one certain what would come next. Candace Owens stood there at the edge of Kelly Clarkson's cheerful pastel rug, her fists clenched so tight her knuckles blanched under the harsh studio lights. Kelly stood opposite her, breathing hard but steady. Every word that followed felt like it might split the stage floor down the middle. Candace's voice dropped low, but it was razor sharp. Keep telling them they're victims, Kelly. Keep singing them lullabies while they drown. Kelly's eyes didn't blink. And you keep cashing checks off their shame. A few audience members gasped. A short hiss of whispers cracked under the hush that was now broken wide open. Candace's laugh came out bitter, cold. Better to cash checks for telling the truth than for selling pity dressed up as pop songs. Kelly stepped closer, her voice landing flat, but loud enough to sting. You're not telling the truth. You're blaming the wounded so you can feel powerful. Candace's jaw twitched. And you're the hero, right? You'll go home to your big house and feel good about how you stood up for the little guy while nothing changes. Kelly shook her head once, slow. It changes when people see there's still compassion left in this world, not just shame and blame dressed up like tough love. A single clap started, then stopped when Candace snapped her glare toward the audience, eyes burning. Go ahead and clap for her fairy tales. Let's see if that pays your bills. A ripple of boos flared, soft, but real. A few in the front row sat stiff, arms crossed, eyes narrowed. Kelly didn't raise her voice. She just breathed out the words that broke the hush for good. You should go, Candace. If all you've got is contempt for these people, you don't belong here. Candace looked around the audience, her chin high, but her eyes cold. You want your fake hope? Fine. Keep it. But don't cry when the truth comes knocking. She spun toward the wings, her heels clicking so loud you could hear every footstep echoed down the studio corridor. Kelly didn't move, didn't say goodbye, didn't smooth it over. The audience hush stayed split down the middle, a few nodding, a few glaring, everyone knowing they'd just watched something raw, messy, and too real to package up in a feel-good bow. And when the camera cut, the only thing left on Kelly Clarkson's bright pastel stage was the echo of what happens when you mistake shame for strength and find out the hush doesn't buy it anymore.